a large amount of industry startups are including us in their resources from the launch. I think this really shows an industry-wide understanding of just how necessary providing mental health resources are.
Welcome back to On the Horizon. This is Melrose Michaels. I am your host, and I'm here to share what's worked for me in building my adult creator business to try to make building yours just a little bit easier. Let's get into today's episode. Today's guest is someone whose work has saved lives, literally. In an industry where isolation, burnout, and stigma are way too common, Leya Tanit decided that was no longer acceptable. After losing people in her own community, she founded Pineapple Support, a nonprofit that's become the go-to resource for mental health in the adult industry. With 20 plus years of experience both on camera and behind the scenes, Leya brings not just a deep empathy, but real solutions. And today, she's here to talk about all of it, from fighting isolation to shaking off shame, and how you can actually access the support that you need. If you've ever felt alone in this work, this is the conversation for you. So I hope you'll stick around to the end. Leya, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute honor.
I would like to start this off with you giving some background with kind of how you came to create Pineapple Support and a little bit of your own story as well, just in case anyone here isn't as familiar with you as I am.
Absolutely. So I've been part of the industry since it was legal and part of the BDSM community from the age of about 16, which is legal in the UK. So this community has always been such a big part of my life and part of my evolution as well. When I was at school, it did not fit in, and I'm sure there are many people listening that felt the same way. And the adult industry was always so very welcoming and a place that I called home. Now, for those of us who've been in the industry for a while, I'm sure you remember the tragedy we experienced at the end of 2017, early 2018, when 5 well-known female creators lost their lives to suicide or drug misuse. This was the catalyst for creating Pineapple Support. After hearing about these horrific deaths, I delved into research and discovered just how widespread the problem was. This is a highly stigmatized industry. It's one that is very close to my heart, and seeing how much the community was suffering and how generic mental health systems just aren't adequate. That was really what brought me to create Pineapple Support. And here we are now. I've been content creator, I've been a dancer, I've seen the industry from many different angles. So having that kind of background information was really, really helpful. And I think what made Pineapple thrive.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And when you launched Pineapple, like, you were really filling a gap that so many of us kind of feel and know exists, but I'm sure don't necessarily know or have the tools to address. So I'm kind of curious, like, what were some of the biggest mental health challenges you saw happening in adults that kind of stood out or made you say, like, okay, this has to change?
To be honest, until I started Pineapple, I hadn't done any research. It wasn't something that I was aware of at all. So, we all have our preconceived ideas, don't we? As much as we want to deny it or deny ourselves, everyone thinks it's going to be sexual trauma. Everyone thinks it's going to be abuse, drug misuse. And actually, starting Pineapple, it really became obvious that these are not the main issues that we're seeing in the adult industry. Before getting on the call, I did a little bit of research and I went through our figures over the last few years, because I know what seems to be the main stresses at the moment from our therapy applications. But it was really, really interesting to look back through from when we began, when we were taking our first statistics back in 2018, and how these stresses have changed. And to give you an idea, the top stressors in 2024 were ADHD, anxiety and depression, relationship issues, stress, and trauma, PTSD. But the way these have changed through the last 4 years has been, 6 years, has been really, really interesting. And the shock and the impact of 2020, which I think we all feel was so far away, but it really wasn't. And the lasting effects that's had on people's anxiety and depression, mostly, has been, yeah, it's been very impactful.
Yeah, it's interesting because we do feel like COVID was such a long time ago and that things feel some variety of normal now, but I don't think everyone's super aware of how much damage that period of time did to people.
Yeah, there's the percentage of people coming for support with anxiety and depression went from anxiety 57% to depression 56%, so very similar, up to during 2020, 79 to 80% of people that were coming for support through Pineapple Support were experiencing anxiety and depression. That's dropped down now to the early 70s, but it's still quite a jump up from 55, 56, 57%, which is where it was. And it's been the same with stress and trauma. Stress was at around 42%, trauma 21%, and that's gone up to 54%. And these areas, stress and trauma, haven't gone down. So after 2020, they raised to around this level and have continued, which I find very, very interesting. The clear, long-lasting effects that this has had on us.
If you're enjoying this podcast episode so far, please take one moment to share it with another one of your adult content creator friends, because you know what the rule is here. We do not gatekeep, and we want to make as many adult creators' businesses as easy as possible. And you sharing this episode with them might do exactly that. Thanks so much in advance.
I'm curious, do you think that maybe the shift towards even independent content creation has made things better or worse? Because when I hear that, the stress and the dealing with ADHD and things like that, like I totally can see or can recognize where I feel those things in my content creation business specifically, just because, you have to be super disciplined. Things begin and end with you. You're in this almost this like rat race of creating content constantly and trying not to burn out. And I can definitely see where ADHD and that environment would have huge impacts.
Yes, since we've seen this shift towards independent content creation, which again happened a lot around 2020 due to we saw a huge increase in numbers of creators. People saw entering the industry as something that was going to be easy, a quick way to make some money while they were while they were out of work, and then to drop out again and it'll just disappear, which we know it doesn't. With that, we saw straight away a dramatic increase of newer models reaching out for support. It's down to, as you were saying about the hard work and the discipline you have to do this. People entering the industry unaware of the long-term effects or the decision that this is how this is going to impact their lives and how much work it actually takes. I mean, thank goodness for people like you with SWCEO and the wonderful information that you put out there. It's fantastic people wanting to enter the industry that are doing their research, and for people that have been around a long time. They're very informative. So yeah, and it's just the industry can be isolating, and if you're not able to come to conferences or events, and it takes a lot of work to create a brand and become a successful creator. It's very important to come into the industry with your eyes open. And if you do, I think it can provide you with a lot of freedom and community and flexibility in your work, which are great for people with ADHD, but then also having that lack of structure can be very difficult as well. So it does take a lot of self-discipline.
Yeah. And something you mentioned too was about isolation. And when I think about especially independent content creators or even certain verticals, like for me, webcamming and that like hardcore live streaming phase of my career was super isolating. But when you have like thousands of fans, it can feel, or even when you have thousands of fans, it can feel really isolating working online because especially like to your point, if you're not connected with this community, if you're not attending conferences or events, you tend to feel more alone, even though you're exposed to lots and lots of people. So I'm wondering, like, in terms of isolation, aside from attending events, because, that's a wonderful way to build community, but it's difficult to do, it's expensive and all the rest. Like, what do you recommend for creators who are feeling this kind of intense isolation?
It's something that we hear about a lot, and something that, we see, even for the folks who are able to come to the conferences, the people that have thousands of fans, that they don't know the real you. And I think that can sometimes feel even more isolating. So I mean, the first piece of advice would be always have somewhere that's a space you can be unapologetically you, with people that understand you and care for you and you can unmask in front of. If you're unable to go to the conferences, there's some great online communities. There's lots of forums out there, and I think even Reddit's got some great communities for industry folks. We have support groups, which aren't as scary as they sound. We're starting to run some community groups, community building groups at the moment. We've got them in Colombia and in Romania, but we are looking to expand. And yes, if you're able to come to the shows, that's amazing. But as you were saying, it is expensive. But it is worth it with the amount that you learn at the presentations as well. As you give all this advice, but I know that I suffer when I come back from the conferences as well. Kind of, you get in this little industry bubble, and socializing with non-industry folk can be very boring.
Yes, it's hard to relate at some points because even when I come back from the shows like the Expizzes or the EVN or the test conference, like I come home and it's almost like a little bit of a withdrawal, like, oh, my people are gone and now there's this vacuum.
Yeah, and no one's quite the same as our industry
Yeah,
friends.
absolutely. For like creators that are going to listen to this and who do feel stuck kind of in that isolation bubble, especially like if they're introverted or they don't have maybe a support system and they want to get connected, like something that we've built for Sex Work CEO is like this little community called CEO Society. And it's like a private community. We vet everyone that applies to get in so that we know it's safe. It's just creators in that community. So like if you're listening to this and you know you can't make it to a conference or you don't feel like you have community or support, just know that you can go and you can join that space because like it's completely free to join it. It's not a thing to monetize. It's just a place for everyone to have because I live in a really rural area and it was very hard for me to make that leap to finally be able to attend conferences and stuff in person. So I just want people listening to know that that's also available as a resource. I want to kind of pivot now and talk about stigma and shame because of course, like isolation's close cousin is kind of stigma in my eyes, like whether it's from family or friends or healthcare providers, financial institutions, or even like other creators. Like that's happened before as well. But I'm wondering how you see stigma affecting mental health with the people that you guys work with and come across in Pineapple, because that's a huge one.
Absolutely. If it wasn't for stigma, pineapple support wouldn't exist. If there wasn't stigma surrounding this work, then we could all go and see any mental health care provider or any healthcare provider and not feel like we were going to be judged or we needed to explain ourselves or hide parts of our lives. Our stigma exists and it's always going to exist. We people have prejudices. It's not their fault, but how they project them, how they choose, if they choose not to question them, then it is. We all get brought up with certain ideas, be they, small things or big prejudices. But I think as long as we question them and address them when it pops into your head and go, why did I think that? Okay, this comes from here, this comes from, whatever else, then we can learn to grow as a society. But when it comes to stigma and that being projected onto individuals and the industry, I think, it doesn't matter how confident you are. There's only so many times a person can feel rejected or listen to the same negative comments again and again and again before even people with the toughest skin will start to believe or just give it some airtime. And when that stigma is not just from individuals, it's also from, banks, accommodation, Airbnb, Uber, medical support, the list goes on and on and on. How can that not eventually? It forces people to hide who they are. If it's from family, if it's from people that you should be around on a regular basis, and you start to hide who you are from them, you're going to start wanting to avoid those situations where you need to hide yourself. I think when you hide who you are as well, you lose your sense of self. And without sense of self, we can't have self-esteem, and it just becomes a very slippery slope.
I think that's so well said. I've talked about this more so on other people's podcasts when I've been guests as opposed to mine, but I find like my upbringing and the kind of like my own trauma, my own path to where I am now was very like or I guess I don't know the right word, but what my biggest challenge was trying to kind of unmask a lot. Like I want to be what everyone projected onto me. So like I wanted to be perfect and polished and likable and all of these things. And even when you don't know that you're carrying those like societal requests or loved ones requests or like all the things people project onto you, should you subconsciously choose to try to meet those expectations or whatever they are, like that stuff gets really heavy to carry. So I think the one thing you said that really stood out to me is like having those people that you can completely unmask around, because that's something that's newer to me personally that I've discovered in like the last 3 years, where I finally feel very confidently that I have a few people that I am fully and truly like my authentic self around to like the maximum degree. And it's just so much lighter. Like things feel much heavier when you're going through life that way, and you don't know it until you finally get the opportunity to not carry that anymore, to not wear those masks anymore. And stigma only amplifies that problem. So that's really relatable to me, because I'm finding like I'm undoing all of that work now in my mid 30s that I've been going through or living with my whole life up until this point.
It's I'm listening to a book on ADHD at the moment from Double Matter, and he's talked a lot about masking and the need to fit into that required shape, and to say yes. It's very interesting. Okay, I hear exactly where you're coming from.
Yeah. I would like to make the rest of this kind of episode really tangible and practical. So I want to talk about like if people listen to this episode and they are struggling and they do want to reach out, but maybe they're not sure how to start. Like, what does the actual process of working with Pineapple Support look like? Like, how do they go about it? Is it hard to qualify? Can anyone in the industry apply? Like, what does this look like?
So we have tried to make it as simple as possible. If you visit the pineapplesupport.org website, you can go to our resources, and basically, depending on which resource you would like, there's a specific form to complete. You do need to be able to provide proof that you've been active in the online adult industry for a minimum of 6 months. This can be linked to your X account. We don't need, it doesn't have to be a campsite. It doesn't have to be whatever. We know people move around a lot, so you may not have a full 6 months on that site. So your social media account is great. And once we have that information, we can get you connected. If you're someone who works behind the scenes or doesn't show their face online, we can sometimes ask for like an employment contract or proof of payment, just a way to prove that you have been active in the last 6 months. We want to make sure that our support goes to people in the industry who've been working in the industry. So that's why we're very diligent with making sure this is checked. The form that you complete is on a HIPAA compliant medical website. It's not hosted by Pineapple Support. It's uber secure. So there isn't, and that information is not passed on to the therapist. That information is not passed on to anybody else. There is generally one person who looks at it, and that is Kirsty. She's our therapy facilitator. She's been with us since we started almost, so kind of 7 years. And the only time anybody else would look at that would be if it was me to go through someone's notes if something got a bit complicated. But otherwise, that's it. One person, very secure. And yeah, so at the beginning of 2024, we had a wait list for the first time. That was due to kind of changes in funding. And we had to be a little bit careful with changes in funding, and a lot of people applying for therapy. And at the end of 2024, we had about 230 people on the wait list. we have now got this wait list down to under 30. So people were waiting a little while for therapy. Just we're making sure we got the urgents through and getting everyone out through as quickly as possible. But that wait time is right down now. We're just trying to make sure that we've got everything balanced, but really, really happy with that. Our resources are all free. With the one-on-one therapy, we do ask people to contribute what they can afford. This is because therapy is expensive, and one, we just wouldn't be able to provide care to anywhere near the amount of people that we do if we didn't have this support from those using the services. And also, it's kind of part of the therapy process to feel like you're contributing towards your own journey is a big part of the learning and growing and accountability part.
Absolutely. The fact that you guys had this huge wait list is so interesting to hear, and it explains a lot, because I know, especially as like a business owner, and not that that's what Pineapple Support is about, but this is from my side internally, like things, especially coming out of the COVID era, got so crazy and backed up, and trying to mitigate and understand how to navigate going forward in how to operate any organization is very challenging. So like, it didn't even occur to me that coming out of the COVID era, Pineapple was probably flooded, was probably super overwhelmed in terms of the resources you guys had available to this community, because we were so in need and we were so flooded as a industry. Like, we had such a growth, segment of this space that isn't normally there, just because people were out of work and looking for opportunities, and also having to try to navigate the space, which is not an easy thing to do. Because, I've seen and we've heard sometimes in the community, like, oh, I reached out to Pineapple and I wasn't able to get through. And that was something that I've always kind of come back with, is like, I know that because I'm, talked to you, and I've been involved with this organization, but you guys always try to prioritize the most in need first. And I've even been in with DMs with you where you guys have taken care of someone who was really in a bad spot. And I think that it's good that we can say that out loud and address that, almost, because I don't ever want people to think that this organization is anything less than incredible, because like, I've seen the stuff that you guys do. I happened to be at one of your dinners that I totally crashed on accident. I will never not say sorry enough for that. But you had said some of these amazing numbers of all the amazing, like the amount of people you guys have been able to help. And I was just in awe of it, because the reach and the impact you guys have had is so extraordinary. And I don't think people understand.
Thank you. It is, and you said it's not a, it is a business. It's a non-profit organization, but at the end of the day, we have budgets, we have money coming in, and we have money going out. We have to go and market and beg for money from companies, and it's hard work. It's a constant battle to raise enough funds to cover the need. And as I said, at the end of 2020, the industry was hit. The world was hit. I think there was a lot of changes in the economy, and as I'm sure many people listening will know, there was a drop in income in the adult space for many companies, and fortunately, it didn't last too long. We've seen a nice shift now by the end of Q4 2024, which is what has allowed us to really start getting through this wait list and try and get us back down to zero. And my goal is to get us back to where we were, which is having everyone connected to a therapist within 1 week.
Oh, within 1 week, that's wild. That's an express lane to improvement. That's huge. I know that some people like aren't necessarily ready for therapy yet, or like maybe they're just looking for something they can do today to just feel a little bit more grounded or a little bit more stable. So I'm curious, if people come across this episode and maybe they're at this phase, what would some go-to tools or like coping strategies that you could recommend to creators to help deal with stress or anxiety or that burnout cycle we often find ourselves in?
Oh, I always feel so cliche when I say these things. But the body and mind are so interconnected. We know this. How could they not be there inside our fleshy suitcase? If you're not ready for therapy, if you're feeling down, if you need to just feel a little bit more in yourself, get outside, exercise, even if it's just something gentle like walking, just getting connected to nature makes such a huge difference. Meditate. however that looks for you. For me, that's kind of when I get around to it, art, or yoga. Just put myself in really painful positions, so I can't think of anything else. Getting creative. I think with art, music, dance, I think part of being human is to get creative and to allow that to flow. That's how we invented the wheel, and now that we're taught to suppress these needs and these wants and to focus on the grind and take a break, put your phone down. I struggle with this. So self-care. Everyone talks about self-care. Great. Make the run the bubble bath, but not enough people talk about self-parenting, which is
Oof.
yeah, paying your bills, looking at the bank account, cleaning the house, doing the washing. Oh, I was trying. I said eating the big fat frog, which I think was a Mark Twain saying, to just getting up, and if you have to eat a frog that day, make it the first thing that you do, and then it's out the way. So, and if you've got to eat two frogs, eat the big fat one first. So eat the big fat frog, wake up, do that, get it out the way, and you're going to feel so much better about everything. And drink water and rest. all those things we forget about.
Yes, yes. Oh my gosh. You know, I had said that saying to somebody recently about eat the frog first, and they looked at me like I was crazy. And it just occurred to me when you said, I'm like, you're where I got that from. You're where I got that unexplainable saying from. Eating frog.
Brilliant.
Oh my goodness. I think that it's been so nice that we're kind of starting to have these conversations around mental health, and especially in this industry, because I don't think it wasn't, at least on my kind of timelines and in my conversations 10 years ago, when I was early days and starting out, it wasn't something we talked about. Burnout was not like a buzzword or something you'd ever hear about in those days. And I feel very positively about us moving in that direction. And I wondered if you, who has more of like a bird eye view on things because you're so involved with this aspect of it, do you feel like that's true to say? Like we're getting more, I guess, open about this topic and this subject matter?
I mean, I think so. On an individual level, there seems to be, a growing openness in discussing mental health struggles and understanding them. This, of course, could be down to my algorithm because, these are the people that I follow. But and certainly in the US and Western Europe, there appears to be a very positive movement towards embracing uniqueness and understanding and supporting the needs of others. For Pineapple, as I mentioned before, there was a shift at the end of 2023 with funding. But what we're really seeing now, which is just wonderful, is a large amount of industry startups that are including us in their resources from the launch, and the return of many companies who were unable to support this while they were restructuring early 2024. But I think this really shows an industry-wide understanding of just how necessary providing mental health resources are and how important it is to support and care for creators. And on that note, I do want to add that the power now lies with the creators, and you have the choice which platforms to work with. And I just want to say, choose wisely. Look at who is giving back to the community. And that doesn't necessarily have to be Pineapple support, but I think it's, you guys can direct the direction of the industry now, and showing that you would rather be with companies that give back to community, I think will have a very big impact.
I totally agree. And I love that you mentioned kind of the power that we have in this era, because the creator economy in general, like, is only getting bigger. And that's also reflected in our own community, in our segment of the creator economy. So it's always comes down to, like, they say this phrase, like, vote with your money, like either with the things you buy or how you spend, but also how you earn. Like, you can choose which platforms to share your revenue with because they take a percentage anyway. So making those choices wisely of where you want to be is really important. And I'm very intentional with the platforms I do work on and I choose to be active on. I often get asked that question, like, well, why aren't you here? Why are you here? And my response is like, because I'm making a choice. And like, that's all I'll usually say about it, because everyone's personal choices are their own, and like what causes or what things that they want to support. But I think it's a really valid point to bring that up, is like, we do have a lot of power, and we can use that power strategically for the things and organizations that are meaningful to us.
I'm giving you snaps. You can't see it, but you're getting snaps.
I love that. I have a friend here, Amari, the Rebel, who's a creator in our community that I want to bring up to speak. He's been waiting super patiently. Thank you so much, Amari. I'm going to connect you for a brief moment here with Leya, and then you can ask whatever you'd like to ask. And you have the mic, Amari. Welcome to the show.
It's good to hear from you.
You as well. What would you like to chat with Leya about?
I mean, real quickly, I've been waiting about almost 6 years to access mental health services. Any information for people on the waiting list. And to my knowledge, the information that I provided wasn't sufficient, which, in addition to what I was dealing with, helped me feel a little anxiety about not being a sex worker enough. But I wanted to ask if you had any information that you can help people who are on the waiting list access mental health services, perhaps get some clarity or understanding on how they can perhaps look into other resources, or if there's anything they can do to make themselves viable for candidates for the resources.
Yeah, absolutely. As we were discussing earlier, we do require proof that you've been active in the online adult industry for 6 months or within the last 6 months. If you provided that and you've been put on the wait list, you should have been receiving regular updates from Kirsty. If you have not, there is a high possibility that we've been going into your junk. So it's advisable to check your junk mail. If you are concerned that you're not hearing from us, then you can reach out directly to Kirsty, which is we can get her at therapy@pineapplesupport.org. It saves any misspellings with her name. We do also offer, for folks who are not high risk, we offer the option to be connected with an associate therapist immediately. That's a therapist who has all their qualifications. They are just building up their hours to get their full licensure. All the associates that we have registered with Pineapple are working with fully licensed Pineapple therapists, so they are being supervised by people that we have vetted as well. So that is an option for people that want to get connected immediately, that may not have an urgent need and are low risk. But there is that option there. And if you haven't heard from Kirsty in a while, as I said, just reach out to her directly, because it might be that we're going into your junk for some reason. A lot of emails, particularly Gmail, doesn't like the pineapplesupport.org email addresses.
And can you, what's the direct email again? Is it, you said therapy@pineapple?
Yeah, that's therapy@pineapplesupport.org.
Okay, wonderful. Hopefully that helps, Amari.
Thank you.
A pleasure. I think too, something that you just mentioned right now that's really helpful is the fact that you have those associate therapists. I wanted to ask you this, and I almost forgot and glazed right over it, but how do you vet the therapists that you like have in your organization? Because what we mentioned at the start of this episode was like, not every mental care provider or just, person you come into contact with doesn't have these stigmas. Like, how do you vet to know that these therapists or resources are truly sex work friendly?
So we have all of our therapists apply to work with us. Actually, at the beginning of Pineapple Support, we used to go out and hunt for therapists across the internet that were kink aware, sex positive, and reach out and ask if they were interested in working with us. Once we had a positive response, we would ask them to complete a form. We ask for copies of their license, their insurance. And on that form, we asked they sound like quite basic questions, but we've got 3 questions that are, I can't remember off the top of my head. I wrote the form so long ago, but they're around sex positivity and sex work. And you can tell quite a lot from those responses. Once we have that application form through, we will make sure that there hasn't been a single complaint about the therapist on their licensure, and look through those questions. If we're happy with the answers, then we will move forward to the first interview. During that interview, It usually lasts around 45 minutes. We'll get a feeling for that person, ask them some more questions, their views on sex therapy, what does sex positivity mean to them, and if we're happy after that, then we'll take them through to the onboarding process. But we have around 500 therapists, over 500 therapists working or registered with us now, and we've been through that process with every single one. It's been interesting recently because at the beginning, I said we were really trying to hunt therapists down to work with us, and now I think Kelly was doing around 10 therapists interviews a week in the previous couple of months, and many of them don't get accepted to work with us. We need to feel good vibes on at the interview stage to have them move forward to the onboarding.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's something I was super curious about, because that's a huge impact on the kind of like the care that we get in this community, is really not having to battle stigma in an office like that, like a therapist office. I think to kind of wrap this up, I would love if, someone's listening right now or listens to this episode when it becomes a podcast episode and they're feeling stuck or exhausted or just alone in their experience. What is something that you would want them to kind of hear in this episode and hold on to from this conversation?
I think most importantly that you're not alone. There are people who care about you, even if it doesn't feel like it. And whatever feelings you're going through, they will pass. Nothing is permanent. And that asking for help is brave and necessary. We're pack animals and we're not meant to survive alone.
Oh, that is everything right there. Then the not feeling alone, especially, and then the fact that the feelings will pass. I can't tell you how many times I felt so bad. And then the next day it's sunshiny and beautiful. And I'm just like, I just needed to hold on for 24 hours. And like nothing looks as bad as it did a day ago. And just time, man. Time has such an impact on us as humans. It's insane.
It does. They say time heals all. I don't know if it heals it, but it certainly lets you process.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Could you plug your socials and websites so that anyone that comes across this knows how to get a hold of you or your resources?
Yes, we are Pineapple YSW on X, to keep wanting to say Twitter, and also on Instagram. On Facebook, I think we're just /Pineapple Support, and on YouTube /Pineapple Support also.
Awesome. Thank you, Leya, so much for being here, and not just like sharing your knowledge, but also your heart. I know you're a wonderful person. The work you're doing is truly changing lives. And I know so many people that listen to this and come across this, they're going to walk away with, clarity, comfort, and a sense of community just from having been able to listen to the conversation. So seriously, thank you for just showing up and doing what you do.
Thank you for being wonderful and a good friend. I appreciate having you in my life, darling.
Oh, you're so sweet. I don't want you to forget, if this is your first time catching an episode, please come hang out with us live next time. We do these live spaces on X or Twitter on Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Central. And hey, if something from today's conversation really hit home for you or helped you in your business or the way you approach your adult creator business, I'd love for you to just take a moment and rate the podcast 5 stars and leave a little review for it. It helps us get out to more creators so that they can discover our show and support us in the resources in our community. So with that, thank you again, Leya, and thank you everyone listening. We will catch you on the next one. Bye, guys.
It would be absolutely incredible if you rated this podcast 5 stars and left a little review. We want to get this podcast to as many adult creators as possible, and you taking a second to leave a couple stars and a review really helps us do that. Thanks so much.